Stephen Welch has two titles. He's the Senior Vice President of Communications for the American College of Chest Physicians, which is ACCP. He is also the Executive Editor of Chest, which is their flagship journal.
Thank you. All right, are we having fun yet? Are we? Yeah, sometimes I love to go last, sometimes I don't. I'm keeping you guys from the booze, so I realize I need to make this good, right? So I'm going to change gears a little bit. I know we've been talking a lot about publishing and editorial things specifically. I'd like to talk a little bit about just the broader organizational aspects of going international, and I'll weave in some of the things. I think that a lot of the things that other speakers have talked about today have been a great kickoff. And I'll try to tie some of these around to close it out. So, tell you a little bit about us and talk a little bit about what international means from a strategy, membership engagement, education and content, and of course publishing. Because how many of you guys are in societies or associations in this room? So quite a few of you. So, although you're probably all publishing, your organizations are obviously more than that. And so the whole global thing has got to be bigger than just your department and your area. Our mission and vision reflect the fact that we want to be a global leader. That's part of our vision for the organization. It's something that we take very seriously. That it's not just about, even though our name is the American College of Chest Physicians, and I think that's something that we've gone back and forth on a lot of times in talking about taking the organization more global. Every few years this comes up. Do we need to change the name? Should we drop the American off of it? Is that a hindrance? Is it a help? And in some cases, it's a little bit of both. We're the largest clinical pulmonary critical care and sleep society. We've got about over 18,000 members in more than 100 countries. So we are, a global organization by definition. About 20% of our members are outside of North America. It's primarily a physician organization, but we also have nurses and NPs and respiratory therapists and things like that, PhDs, PharmDs. Our goal is to create high-quality medical education, whether it's publishing or a lot of other things. As we said, Chest is our flagship, and our current president, I think, reflects the fact that we take international seriously. We for years and years, this organization was the old white guy society, and that's got to change. It's been changing over time, and we take that seriously as we're trying to get people involved in leadership. As an organization, we do tons of stuff. We're not only just a publisher, but our educational things. We do live meetings, board review courses. We're into medical simulation. We do apps, ebooks. We do evidence-based guidelines, lots and lots of content. I think that's where we're trying to tie all this together and make sure that it's the organization that we're trying to push globally, not just journals and publications and things like that. Here's some pictures from our sim lab taking place where they have these high-fidelity mannequins. They bleed. You can inject them. The one on the right, the eyes dilate when you flash light into them. It's actually used for airway courses where you teach people how to intubate. Those front teeth will actually break off if you're too rough on them, which actually happens with real people when they're trying to be intubated with hard tubes and things like that. So these things are really amazing, and what I'm going to talk about a little bit later is, you need to find some of those things that you're the industry leader in that you can bring outside of the U.S. into international organizations that they can't get there. We see simulation and some of these education things as something that we're taking the lead on, and we're starting to do courses internationally to help support all of our efforts and use those things to build awareness and build brand recognition of our journal, of our publications, of our membership society. So some of these things you want to leverage in order to try to further the goals for the whole organization. Our journal, of course, Chest, that's the big dog. That's what people recognize when we did all these surveys of when we were starting to do a lot of international work in the 1990s. I'm old. I've been working there since 1994. We were looking at things like, what do people want? What do they recognize? And nobody knew who the American College of Chest Physicians was. We meant nothing to most of the people outside of the U.S., but they knew Chest. And so we took that seriously. We rebranded everything to try to take advantage of that. But Chest is it's our flagship. It's #1 ranked journal for pulmonologists. The print circulation 16,000, but then we get 400,000 visitors to our website every month, and a great deal of those are from outside the U.S. That's a huge opportunity. Those are potential customers for the journal, for the organization. Our app's been distributed widely, and we do some international editions of our journal, which I'll get to in a little bit. 34,000 submissions a year, 65% of those come from outside the U.S. So our journal is much more heavily internationally weighted from a content standpoint even than our organization is. We're proud about our app. We really believe that mobile is a way to get out to the global marketplace because mobile devices are so widely disseminated. So when we're thinking about global, this is what we really think. But like I said before, when you're thinking about your name of your organization, it's the American whatever society. The problem you have is that people think that you think like this. Okay? and I think that that's one of the liabilities that you have when you have American in your name, because let's face it, there are countries outside the U.S. who think that this is how most Americans think, and if you grew up in the rural Midwest like I do, you may know a few people who probably think this way too. So what's international mean? Well, so some things I want to run through as we're going through this. First of all, your organization has to have a strategic plan. If they don't, become the champion of that. Go to your leadership and say, look, if we're going to be serious about international development and global development, like you heard before, it's going to take time, it's going to take money, it's going to take resources. You have to have a plan. You can't just have your president says, oh, I got invited to go speak in this country. I'm going to go over there, and this person's going to tell me how great it is, and then I'm going to take a bunch of my cronies over there next year, and we're going to go have a meeting. That's not the way to develop a plan and an international presence. So it's got to be your strategic plan. You've got to budget for it. You have to plan for it. And like you heard before, you've got to have that support from all areas of your leadership. You need to be thinking about, are you embracing international membership and participation, even at the leadership level? Not just about getting more members, but are you getting them engaged? Are your conferences planned in a way to make them more international friendly? Is the content that your organization does as a whole, is it geared toward the U.S. market only, or is it really geared toward outside the U.S.? And how, if it's not, how can you start thinking that way, or talk to your education people to start thinking that way? And then your technology plans have to take global access via online mobile devices into consideration. So strategic planning, the question is, where does it fall in your strategic plan? If it's not even there, then it needs to be. And if it's not for your organization, I'll tell you what, your publications group should be having their own strategic planning independent of your society's strategic planning. If you're not, I highly recommend you do it, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to start building out your own plans if your society isn't doing it from the bigger picture. And the other thing is, how are you leveraging your organization, your brand outside the U.S., whether it's your journal or your publications or your entire societal presence? And I'll tell you, you need to do some surveys and some market research to find out what people think, because the assumptions that you may have or that your leadership have, because they think that they often know everything, it may not necessarily be true, and that's okay. What we did, like I said before, is we went out and we found out that nobody knew who the American College of Chest Physicians was. And our annual meeting was poorly attended by internationals, probably because we called it the Annual International Scientific Assembly of the American College of Chest Physicians, and we could barely write it and spell it, and you couldn't even say it. So we changed the name of the meeting to CHEST, because what we found was everybody knew the journal. So guess what? It's not the International Society, it's the CHEST meeting. That's easy. CHEST 2011, CHEST 2012. It became so easy to do that. We have quizzes. We call them the CHEST Challenge. We've got a newspaper. It's the CHEST Physician newspaper, all that kind of thing. We really, it sounds simple and no-brainer, but for years and years and years, we had all these long, descriptive names for everything that we were doing, when the answer was quite simple. People knew one thing, and it was one word long. And so our membership trends, right now we're about 20% international. I'll tell you what, though, we've been doing some, the analysis we show is that our international membership and our conference participation from outside the U.S. is increasing, and our membership in the U.S. is decreasing. And part of that is because of the workforce shortage in physicians, and we knew this was coming, but it's starting to hit now, where we're actually seeing we saw a slowdown of U.S. membership growth, and now it's starting to drop off, because there's that big bell curve where a lot of people are reaching retirement age and they're dropping their memberships. So, we obviously global is important not just from our publications, but it's important for our whole society. What we're seeing too is that where those international members come from is, Asia has grown tremendously, especially China over the past 10 years because of efforts that we've done specifically. Europe is about the same. We're starting to see more from Middle East and North Africa. That's actually grown tremendously. We used to have almost nobody in the Middle East were members of our organization, and now it's 2.5%. So let's talk about that membership. You need to think about, is your organization internationally friendly, and what can you do to take advantage of it? Do you make it easy for them to do business with you? And that's the thing that your organization has got to think about, whether it's your society, whether it's your journal and your publications, like you've heard today. Think about the language barriers. Think about the monetary barriers. If everything that you do as an organization is priced for the U.S. market, guess what? You're excluding a whole lot of people who can't afford things from various countries, and you've got to think about creating a tiered system for pricing. Are your international members allowed to and encouraged to participate in committees and work groups? Can they serve on your board? Can they even become the president or a leader in your organization? That's very important for you to start capturing that knowledge of what Pippa was talking about, where thinking about what you want to, using those local experts to get information about it. Do the market research. What's the potential for global growth and engagement in the organization in the regions that you're looking at? Are your international members surveyed? Because you need to know what they want. Are there already local societies serving their needs? Maybe you don't need to go into it. Maybe you need to partner with a local society because they could do it for you. Or maybe there is none and you find out that you could do something better, stronger, and faster. And the other thing is your content easily accessible to them, both financially and electronically? Talk a little bit about your live conferences. Where does your organization hold its annual meeting? Is it always in the U.S.? Because I'll tell you what, there's a lot of people who can't get visas to get into the U.S. very easily. So you might want to consider occasionally having a conference in Canada, because there's a lot of countries that there's people who they'll go to Canada because it's easier for them to get a travel visa. It's difficult for people from the Middle East and various countries to get one from the U.S. You need to think about making it easy for them to get those travel visas. Provide letters to them that say that they've been invited to the conference. Little things like that can help them get a travel visa if your organization's not doing it. Key to the things that they can participate in. We used to always, for our annual meeting, have research abstracts. Research abstracts, research abstracts, research abstracts. What we've realized when we went out to the international people was a lot of them aren't doing research, but tons of them are clinicians and are doing they had case reports they wanted to share. We finally said, well, why don't we let them start submitting case reports to our meeting? How? We just had 400 case reports submitted to our annual meeting. That's 400 more people that are going to come and attend our conference so they can present their case report. Why did it take us since 1935 to figure that out? But those are the kind of things that you want to be thinking about. It's not just what you've always done the same way. Think about what they have that they can bring educationally to your meeting and to their peers. And same thing with your publications and all this. We capture content. We try to make it available in an archive. We've experimented with live streaming. That's tough because people can't always make it, but we're looking at ways to try to distribute content out to people who can't make it to the meeting. That should be part of your core strategy. That's kind of a no-brainer. And the other thing is, you may want to look at partnering with the local societies about doing events there, and that's something that we've done. These are some pictures from a recent conference we did in Saudi Arabia. We did a big simulation exercise there. We had our editor-in-chief go and talk, and speaking about the journal and how to get published. We usually send him to these kind of meetings because everybody wants to know how to get in the journal, so we tie that into the other education that we're doing, and that becomes a very valuable piece. Here's one of our docs doing a simulation course also. We also had recently a group that went to China, spoke at a partnership there with one of the Chinese respiratory societies. Those are all ways that you can leverage people there to help you, further your efforts, make good connections, build those relationships that they're the expert in that local region. You can take advantage of that. How am I doing for time here? Yeah, right. So if I'm talking too fast, just say so. I tend to get excited and I talk really fast sometimes, and I drink a lot of caffeine, so that happens. If you find out if there's programs that maybe you may be doing educational things that are really focused on the U.S. Maybe you can take some of that and structure it for international. That's something we had some certification programs. We turned it into certificate of completion because we couldn't actually do a certification in those other countries, but it was really easy to take that whole structure and say, well, a certificate of completion is kind of like a certification, but it's not really. But it was good enough for them. They got a piece of paper that they could hang on their wall that said, I took this course from this renowned organization, and that meant a lot to them. So that's something that your educational people might want to consider doing. The other thing is sometimes local societies will come and say, we want to license, we'd like to use your content. You might be able to actually license your content to local societies to distribute, because if you're a leader in your field, that may be a way that they can help you actually disseminate some of your content, and they don't have to try to produce it themselves. Partnering with translation agencies, if that's a need for your constituents. Again, it all depends on whether they're good English speakers in the region that you're trying to get into. And really, are there competency tests that your content might be a good fit for? Sometimes you can use your local members to help take content that you've developed and turn it into training modules for their exams or their certifications. Technology, online platforms. Obviously, I mean, we all know everything has to be digital. You got to leverage social media. One of the things we found out was over half of our Facebook likers are non-U.S. And we found that very interesting because you always hear that Baidu or Tencent or whatever is really big in China, and this group is big in Brazil. But we have tons of Facebook likers that are not U.S. based. And again, mobile friendly. You've got to be mobile friendly, because even though the U.S. is adopting mobile at a fast rate, everybody outside the U.S. has had phones for ages. And the thing is, they use text and SMS a lot more than we do. That's a staple for outside the U.S. So think about things that you can do to leverage texting, messaging, whether it's multimedia messaging or things like that, because everybody's using that. Even if they don't have a smartphone, you can still use texting to communicate with them. The other thing is survey your members. Find out what do they use, but also what are they planning to buy? Because we did that, and everybody said, well, Apple versus Android, iPhone versus Android. Docs use iPads quite a bit, but we were hearing that the Android is outselling Apple, blah, blah, blah. We talked to our doctors, did the surveys. 30% of them owned an iPhone or an iPad, but 70% said they were going to have one in the next year, because their institutions were actually transitioning them over to those devices, because that's what their institutions use. They use the iPad for entering all scripts and things like that. So just doing a survey, survey your members, get some market data, understand what it is that they want, but don't just ask them what they want. Ask them what they're planning to do in the next 12 months, so that you can start planning for the future. Or maybe it's 2 years, or maybe it's longer than that. So mobile, there's more smartphones on the planet than people, and mobile. I can't stress how much mobile is going to mean from a global standpoint, because you're seeing this explosion of these devices being sold and distributed all over the world. I love this. Smartphones and Maslow's hierarchy. You've actually got more mobile subscriptions to phones than people have electricity and safe drinking water, bank accounts. I mean, that's just mind-blowing. That's only going to get bigger. So if you don't have a mobile strategy and you're not looking at how you can mobily optimize your publications, your website, and all the things you do, you need to put some thought. It needs to become a big piece of that strategic plan. And same thing with the social media. You've got social media in the palm of your hand, and you've got mobile networks. I mean, look at the whole world is mobile, and they're on social platforms of some type. This is really old. It's like Facebook 640 million. What's it, like 950 now? You've got like a seventh of the world's population on Facebook, which is just unbelievable. And that can be a really effective platform for certain types of communication and dissemination. I know social media topic's real hot here, so I won't go into that. Talk a little bit about translations. We've done international editions of our journals for quite some time. They're usually a subset of articles that we then use a local publisher to translate and distribute in that country. We use it to build brand awareness of the publication. We want to be awareness with authors and potential submitters. It's a way to plug things that the society is doing so they understand who we are, our meetings, all that kind of stuff. Get them to the website. That's what we want to do. Even though they might not read English, they'll still go to our website and look through the things that, if they don't read it extremely well, they'll still go and look at abstracts and things like that on our journal site. It also helps to engage international members. We actually use our local members as editorial board people who help select the articles to translate, and then also kind of our eyes and ears on the ground to make sure that nothing inappropriate is going on, that the translations are good quality, that the distribution's happening as it's supposed to. They kind of help be our advocates locally. And it makes them feel like they're participating in something important. And then we do these publications tours like you heard earlier, getting the editor-in-chief and other people out to talk to the authors and potential authors about how to maximize their opportunity for publication. I mean, they're dying for that kind of information. The two things that when we go out to our international members, if they tell us they want, is number one, they want help with preparing their papers. So I was really glad that you did that presentation, because I think that's a service that people really want. And they also want somebody to come to their locally and talk to them about this so they can ask them questions face to face. And they always ask that question, like, why don't you like people from my country? Because you never accept our papers. Everybody thinks that you're discriminating against their country. And then we show them the statistics to say, well, actually, we reject something like 90% of the papers, so you guys are doing pretty good. And it's important, though, to have that face-to-face interaction so that you can dispel some of those myths. And we found those to be incredibly successful and popular. If only we had the money to do more of them. They're also expensive, as you had mentioned earlier. When we launched our Chinese edition, we had our local leader in China. We sent our president over. It was a big to-do. I mean, the pomp and circumstance was wonderful, but it was really successful because what's happened is, our membership went from like 7 people in China 15 years ago. Now there's over 400, I think, and it's still growing. And although that's not an enormous number for respiratory clinical physicians, we're pretty happy with that, and we're continuing to build more. When you look at our website, the journal site, we get about 4 million visitors a year. So 1.3 of those come from the U.S. If you look at the 2 through 10, is about another million. And as you'd expect, the UK and Canada, India, Australia, all areas that are English-speaking are at the top of the heap. But what's interesting is we have international editions in India, China, Italy, Brazil, and Spain, and it's amazing how they kind of round up the top 10. We felt that that's a good indication that these things are helping us drive traffic to those areas. And those are the areas that were really the focus of our strategic initiatives. We identified 5 regions that we wanted to expand in when we did our strategic planning globally, and these were the areas that we wanted to focus on, and they've been successful. Our submissions, I talked a little bit about this earlier. We get about 40% from the U.S. and everything, or 30% is in the U.S. The rest comes from outside. Our accepted papers, there's definitely a skew toward the English, the native stuff. It's 41% accepted, and the rest from outside the U.S. But that's still a big percentage, and kind of reflects that we're getting a lot from all over. What's interesting is, again, 10 years ago, China wasn't even on the map, and now it's number 3. So that's that. I mean, it's amazing how that's growing. I actually got this slide from Mark Danderson of the Danderson Consulting Group, showing the publication by Asian authors from 97 to 2010. You can just see that spike. It's huge, and that's happening everywhere. I think they're doing the research. They're trying to get it in journals, and they're breaking into the market, and that's only going to go up over the next 5 years. It's going to be huge. So. With that, I'll stop and take questions because I think we're right about at 5:30. Again, make global part of your entire organization's strategic plan, but if they're not going to do it yourself, at least with your publications. Create a plan. Make it easy for your customers to do business with you no matter where they live. Think about how your content can be used, and make sure that you're disseminating everything digitally. Take advantage of promoting your content through multiple channels, and utilize technology appropriately. Target those areas that you want to focus on, and like you said, I think the 4 Ps are great. Definitely, you have to be patient. You have to be persistent. It will take time. We've been working in China since I think the first time I went there was 2001. So it's been almost 11 years, but we're happy with the results we've got. But it's still ongoing, and you'll get there eventually. And with that, to accomplish these things, you got to bust down the silos in your organization. Become a champion for your organization, thinking about the entire organization globally, not publications in your journals. Thank you.
Okay, we have a question.
It's not really a question. Mauricio Rocha Silva from São Paulo, Brazil. In the mid-80s, Ronald Reagan went to Brazil on a state visit. This is 30 years ago. And at the state dinner, he said he was very happy to be in Bolivia. And then he realized that somebody probably nudged him. He said, that's where I'm going to. He actually was going to Colombia. So
you like the map, is what I'm hearing.
Yes, that map. Yes, that map. I spent my whole scientific life with one dogma: never publish in a Brazilian journal unless you want to hide your results. And once I finished my life as a scientist, I became the editor of a Brazilian journal. Now, the thing is, if you want to get to Brazil, and I'm sure this applies to China as well, you better rush. Because, I mean, just São Paulo State, which is about half of Brazilian science, has a research foundation which has about $2 billion to spend every year. And a lot of that goes into making good local journals. So I noticed that your graph of people who read chest, I mean, chest is big, enormous, Brazil is way up, but it's not way up on the list of submissions, although Brazil is now the 13th most, because we're developing it. Right. We're developing journals in Brazil. And this is going to be true about China, Brazil, India. So we are going big for local journals. So if you want to compete in that market and in the Chinese market, you better start moving pretty quickly, because there are going to be very big markets in the next 10 years, and there's going to be a huge competition from inside in all of these countries. I think that's an idea I would like to express.
That's a great point. You're absolutely right. We're already seeing in China where some of our leaders who used to support our journal now, they've started their own local journal, and obviously that's become the focus of their energy. Yeah, so you're right.
Thank you for that observation.
I have, for the last 3-4 years, been managing an international unions magazine Episodes, which is a my words aren't good because I've had difficulties with that, you know, at this age. But anyhow, I have this magazine that has to go out 4 times a year, and it has to go to lots of countries, and it comes in from all of them. It's put in India now. It came from China first. From the U.S. first, and then it hops around every 5 or 6 years. Anyhow, I am interested in broadening the circulation, and I'm wondering if people who have it's more expensive to send the printed, so I want to use electronic things for where they go, and I wonder if anybody knows ways that they are actually controlling the use of the electronics in a way that it doesn't flood the country and hurt the other countries in terms of they're having to pay more because they have to make it up and things like that. So do we have any mechanisms for looking at, for example, getting a deal from the South Africans, which I know I can get, actually, that they will not allow printing without some kind of an extra kickback to the union, the International Union of Geologic Science. There it is. So I'm just interested if other people have had those kinds of things. I've been dealing with it lately, and it's a little different from being one into that for 40 years before that. But the last 3 or 4 years, I've been working on this one for free, of course.
I don't know that I have a solution for you. I can tell you, though, that it does happen in other countries. I mean, we experience it with our Chinese edition of Chest. There's a thing called a CN code, and it's, basically the distribution of print publications in China is all handled by the government and the government post office. So you have to have a CN code in order to have certain distribution rights, and also to be able to have it printed locally. We were never able to get a CN code. We actually had to have our journal printed outside of China and then shipped in for mailing, which raised the expense to the point that was was really difficult for us to distribute it as widely as we had liked to, and that was in spite of the fact that even our editor-in-chief at the time was president of the CMA, which grants the CN codes. He still couldn't even get us to get a CN code for the publication. So we knew it was coming from higher up, and at some point, I think you can't fight City Hall, particularly when you don't know who's running City Hall, really.
That's all right. We're working really out of Paris. UNESCO primarily.
Okay.
You could probably make some great.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. First try.
You might have some insight into that too.
My only point there is to say that things are changing at a wildly rapid pace in China. So just because something was so yesterday doesn't mean it's going to be so tomorrow. So again, having those local trusted contacts that are keeping their pulse on things and can give you information about when time is right to make changes that are strategic and wise for your organization is a wise thing to try and put into place.
Okay. I don't want to cut off conversation prematurely, but you all are troopers. You've stayed 10 minutes into happy hour. So let's thank our speakers.